Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Shania, and in today's video I'm going to be going over my journaling ecosystem, my 2026 reading list, as well as some of my goals that I have for the new year. Okay, so this is my traveler's notebook, and I really enjoy this because since I've upgraded to the bigger size, I've started to do things like junk journaling and having more real estate to hold more stuff, as well as actually use it for memory keeping. So on my traveler's notebook, I used I got the repair kit, and it allows you to change the color of the band. So I changed it to the light blue one, and I added this little taiyaki charm. I know that Travelers sells these, but they're a little bit hard to get. So I just found my own at a local stationery shop. And at that local stationery shop, I also got this little keychain as a bit of a freebie. And then they also sold this little egg tart charm. So on the front, I have two clips. I have one by Traveler's Notebook. It's the one with the airplane on it. And then I just have a regular binder clip. I use both of these to keep the notebook open when I'm writing. So the first insert that I have in my notebook is the one where you can kind of have the little zip pocket. And I use this to hold some of my favorite stickers from some of my favorite artists, as well as stickers from, I guess, random artists that I found in the store. So these ones are by the artist Megan Wang, and I've kind of used a lot of them already, and I'm hoping that she sells more of these in the future, because they only sell two at the local store that I go to. And then I also keep a library card with washi tape on top, and as well as some other stickers by other artists and some clear sticky notes that I haven't really used yet, but a friend gifted it to me, so I'll use it in the future. And so starting off, I have my very first notebook insert, and this is the one where I'm starting to junk journal and chronicle things like travels or little daily mementos that I collect. So this is the cover. I never used to deck things out with stickers before. I used to be very minimal and keep things very plain, but something about, I don't know, turning 26, and I just really wanted to use a lot of stickers. And I've had most of these, I had them, and so for example, I made these two, and I've had these ones by the artist A Little Alley for a couple of years now, and I just wanted to have a reason to just go through all of them. So to start off, I have a little cutout from a flyer that I got, and then I write the date for when I started the journal. So I'll show a few spreads in this notebook, and I recently went to Japan, and so I went maybe 2 months ago, but I finally got around to scrapbooking them and putting it in this little layout. So these are all the tickets and maybe business cards that I collected along the way, and I'm really glad that my boyfriend kept these, because part of me was kind of like, oh, I don't really want to keep these, but I'm glad we did, so I think it'll be really nice to look back on. And then another spread I have is from all the pamphlets that you get at a temple, and they all have these little maps, and so I just cut some of them out and wrote that these are the temples we visited, and then added some stickers all around. So I'm really looking forward to chronicling and adding my memories into this notebook coming into this year, because I think it'd be really nice to look back on, and I think it's been very popular nowadays to revert back to doing things very analog, because I think I would rather look back at this than kind of go through my phone to look at some of these memories, so this will be really useful in the future. So for the second insert in this notebook, this is where I'm going to write down all my ideas for ceramics or any other art projects that I have for this year. And I haven't really done much in this specific insert. This is the Traveler's graph paper, and I haven't done much because I haven't been in the pottery studio pretty much at all this year, because I've been either out of town or busy with the holidays, and then also there was a winter storm this past weekend that had the studio closed, so my schedule hasn't really been aligning that well with doing ceramics, but I will use this eventually to write down the progress of my pieces, as well as sketch out any ideas that I want to bring to life. And so for my third insert, this one's definitely my favorite, because in the past year I didn't paint or draw very much, because towards the end of 2025, I was very fixated on doing ceramics. But coming into this year, I wanted to fuse my love of painting and drawing into my ceramics, and also just use this as another way to, I guess, solidify some of my memories. So I use this to do a little bit of urban sketching or just draw and paint some of the things I have in my day-to-day life. So I'm really excited to show my watercolor traveler's insert. So with any sketchbook that I get, I love to do color wheels and swatches for the paints that I use. I primarily paint with watercolor, and I use the brands Winsor & Newton and Daniel Smith. And I like to figure out how the paint interacts with the paper. So for this specific paper, I do actually enjoy it, even though some may not, because the ink does, or the paint does sit a little bit onto the paper. And without the clips, whenever the water is on the paper, it can kind of like shift around because the paper is buckling, so it'll cause these little pools, but I really don't mind that. And overall, I think it's pretty convenient to have these pre-made versions, but I'll show it later. I actually enjoy making my very own inserts because with my passport traveler's notebook, I used to make my own because I have paper that I really like, so I'll show those off later. So these are me trying to experiment with different combinations of reds, blues, and yellows. And then I like to just continue it. This is probably one of the most relaxing things that help me break into a sketchbook, because sometimes I feel like approaching the first page can be really hard when you don't know what to do. So I always just default to doing color swatches. And so this is my first spread. I want to get better at doing things like landscapes or just objects in general and understanding light and shadow, because I'm somebody who's drawn pretty much my whole life, but I never took any art lessons or anything. I've only learned through YouTube, and I just want to increase my skills a little bit more and be able to add depth to things that I draw. So for this side, this was based off of things that are in my life and also things I saw when I was in Japan. So this is my dog. It's kind of a cursed image, but sometimes he looks really derpy, and he actually kind of does look like that. This is a waddle dee that I saw at the Kirby Cafe in Osaka, and then a matcha latte, some breakfast salmon, a ginkgo tree, and then a lamp in my office. And then on this spread, I painted only things that were from my trip. This was a chicken katsu cutlet that we ate in Asakusa in Tokyo, a cafe dessert that we had in Kamakura, and then once again my dog. Well, I guess he doesn't count. And then this keychain that I found at the stationery store near me, Mount Fuji, a matcha affogato at Atelier Matcha, one matcha that I found in Tokyo. So if you're looking for the brand at Kanbayashi Shunsho, there's a small shop in Akasaka that sells it. There's like no limit or anything, and I feel like it's a pretty small shop, so they only sell this brand if this is the kind of matcha you're looking for. And then I also drew a tin of Yamamasa koi mayan, and then some ramen that we had. And then on this next one is where I was just trying my best to draw a landscape. Sometimes I get a little impatient with the paint drying, so I kind of hop between two pages. So as I was waiting for this page to dry, I was making these illustrations as well. So yeah. And then this page is my favorite so far. So these are two plushies that I got, as well as this crab that I had not finished yet. And this is Chopper. Chopper's my favorite character from One Piece, but I kind of drew him a little too chunky. And then this is Woodstock, and then a little character from the Tamagotchi universe. And so that's all for the inserts, or the paper inserts in my traveler's notebook. I also have the trifold as well in the back. So this one I look forward to using because it can hold up to an entire page or a whole, I think, A4 size paper. So whenever I get new maps or any just large pieces of paper in my future travels, I'll be able to keep them safe. And this is actually the second part of the zipper insert, so you can store stuff in here as well. But for me, I have a gift or a little stamp card from my local stationery store I like to go to, as well as these watercolor Polaroids that I made. So when I make my traveler's inserts for myself, there's always scrap paper because I could never really do the math in a way that would use 100% of the paper. So whenever I have these scraps, I like to collect them and then use them for something else. And that's all for my traveler's notebook. If you have any questions on this specifically, feel free to let me know in the comments. So I got the inserts that I made for myself. So I made them in these 3 colors, green, red, and I think like a blackish brown. 2 of them are watercolor paper and 1 of them is Midori MD paper. So you can actually buy Midori paper. I bought mine from, once again, my local stationery store. But specifically for the watercolor ones, I think this first one, I really like to use Arch's watercolor paper, and so I made it into an insert. And it's really easy, actually. You can just take the dimensions of the traveler's notebook and then apply that to whatever paper you like. This cover is just made of a cardstock that I had, and I just add 2 staples and call it a day. For this one, I didn't put that many pages. I only put, 3 sheets in here because I didn't want to make it too thick and make sure that it folds. For this one, however, this red one, I don't remember, I don't remember what the watercolor paper was. It's a hot press paper that I got quite a while ago in a really large sheet. I think it was the Saunders brand, but I actually don't remember. But yeah, I'm excited to try both of these out because even though I do like the one that Travelers does make, I do like the way color interacts better on these papers. So look forward to trying that one. And then this one with Midori paper is what will replace the first insert that I showed, because I think it just, in a sense, is cheaper to make your own if you can, instead of buying them over and over again. Alright, so for the next part of my journaling ecosystem, I use the Leuchtturm dotted journal, or the dot grid journal. I've been using this one for about 5 years, or not this one specifically, but just this brand and the type of paper. This is the 120 gram version of this notebook. They have different versions where the paper is a different paper weight, but I personally write really hard and I press into the paper a lot when I write. And so in the past, when I've used other journals with maybe a thinner paper, every time I would turn the page, I could see the indentations of everything that I wrote. So switching to this for long form writing has been really helpful for me. So for this journal specifically, I use it mostly as my diary. So I put all of my deepest thoughts into it when I want to write for a really long time. And I do prefer to write out my thoughts instead of perhaps typing them. I think it just helps me really focus and get all the things in my head onto paper. And so what I really like about this journal is that it has a lot of pages. I think it has just a little over 200, I think 203 pages, and then it has a nice little pocket on the back cover that you can put any cards, mementos, sticky notes, or stickers that you would want to put in the back. And then on the inside, it's just a typical dot grid. And yeah, I don't really do anything too special when it comes to writing or setting things up for this. I don't use it as a bullet journal. I just prefer a dot grid for writing, even though I guess maybe people would use lined paper. But for me, this has been great for me to write out my thoughts and also maybe plan out ideas for things like videos, or even sometimes sketch out rough ideas for any art projects that I want to take on. So the last part of my journaling ecosystem is this Mark's Log Diary. It's an undated planner that follows a weekly format as well as having monthly spreads. And so I'll go ahead and show how I use the monthly and also the weekly spread. And so for the monthly spread, I like to just use it to plan out any events or major appointments. And I kind of use this also to track memories or things that I have done in a month. So for example, I'll even put maybe when I visit a different city or my Chinese lessons. And I also put holidays and birthdays in here or any major events. So over here on like the 24th to the 26th, I put that there was a winter storm and it was very icy outside. So I don't really plan too far ahead because this planner is undated. I don't want to go too far and then potentially not actually use the page. So I normally set it up at the beginning of every month. And so for weekly spreads, I once again really don't do too much prep or add any extra embellishments to my spreads because I like to keep it simple. Otherwise, I might not end up actually using the planner. But so for me on this left side, I always like to put my reading progress. And so it kind of acts as a little bit of a reading log for me. And so currently I have written that I am 62% done with the book, The Labyrinth of the Spirits. And then I plan out each and every day, either a little bit ahead of time or as the week goes by. And then I also like to use the back pages. So they have these travel maps or also favorites logs, and then wish lists. And I think they have this graph paper where you can draw or make any charts of your liking. And so this is actually the second year that I'll be using this planner. I did end up finishing one for 2025, and I really did enjoy it because the planner itself is really slim. In the past, I have tried using a Hobonichi Techo, I think, cousin, and for me, I really could not stick with it because it was really cumbersome to take around because it was very thick and quite heavy, but this suits me a lot better. And I also just really enjoy the space for the weekly view. I actually, since I'm left-handed, I don't know if this is a left-handed person thing, but in certain planners, when it's maybe too skinny, my hand doesn't very comfortably fit on the page. And so having it be more horizontal is something that I really enjoy. So that's the last part of my journaling ecosystem. And if you have any questions about any of the journals, please go ahead and let me know. But then now I'll go on to showing my favorite pens. And so that's it for my journaling ecosystem, and now I'll go ahead and show some of the pens and pencils that I like to use when I'm journaling or planning out my week. So for the first category, I'll start off with pens. So I'm pretty new to the fountain pen game, but I recently got my very first Twisbi Eco in this turquoise color. And I really like it. I think most people do recommend a Twisbi Eco if you're looking for a really nice beginner fountain pen, or even one that's a little bit more advanced. I think the writing experience with this pen is really, really smooth, and I like that the nib is not scratching the paper. I have used the Lamy Safari, and I do find that nib, and I use the extra fine for both. The Lamy Safari nib does seem to catch on the paper just a little bit more than the Twisbi Eco, but this one, I really, really enjoy it. And for the ink that I put inside of it, I actually got this pen specifically to use it for all of the drawings in my watercolor section of my traveler's notebook. And I use this ink by the brand Platinum. It's one of their pigment inks in the color Sepia. And the reason that I use this combination is that one of my favorite urban sketching artists, I believe that he uses this, and I just really like the look of brown lines on paper in combination with watercolor, because I think using black for the line art for me is a little bit too strong, but this I feel like blends so much better into the background or into the watercolor and just into whatever scene that you're trying to create. So far, I've been really enjoying this, and I look forward to even writing with it as well, because the ink does also write really well. For, I think, my two, I'm not sure if these are gel pens or just ballpoint pens, but I just used the Pilot G2 in .038. I typically use this in my Leuchtturm journal if I want to write for a really long time. This has been a pretty old, reliable pen for me. I think I've been using it, I don't even know how long, probably I don't know, maybe even as early as 2018. This has been a multiple repurchase for me, and once again, this is something that I feel to be pretty accessible and easy to find at either like Office Depot, a Staples, or even once again at a Barnes & Noble or a bookstore or any stationery store that you'll come across. I do find that it's more comfortable for me than maybe a Muji pen, because Muji pens are a little bit too skinny for me. And then I have this Sarasa Zebra pen in 0.5. This pen is, I think, in the color, it's not exactly like as dark of a black color as the Pilot G2. And so I do like it when the pen is not too dark colored. I think it's just for me easier on my eyes. But yeah, this is one that I've been using for quite a while now. I haven't repurchased it. This is my first one, but I really like it because there are times where I do enjoy writing with a little bit of a thicker pen, and so 0.5 is perfect for me. So in addition to my pens, I also use these Fineliners by the brand Staedler. Even though these are quite thin, I actually really like the shape of the barrel, because I think typically some Fineliners are either just a cylindrical shape or even hexagonal, and for me, I think the triangular shape fits my hand the best, and it's super comfortable for me because when I write, I have this kind of like bump on my left middle finger, and this triangular shape is really flat and wide, and it's easy for my hand to support the pen for a long duration. And I don't know if that's the intention, but typically when there's a more hexagonal shape or even a cylindrical shape, I find that it really presses in to that bump and it becomes pretty uncomfortable for me. I also really like these because they seem to last for a really, really long time, even though I do have a couple others where the nib, I don't know if it will show, but the nib does wear over time, it flattens, but I think that's true for pretty much all Fineliners. And so yeah, these are the colors that I like to use. I have a couple others, but I normally pick these up as singles because even though they sell them in packs, I don't really want to use all the colors. So I normally find these at maybe a Kinokuniya or maybe an art store. So I have found some of these at Blick's or a Jerry's Artarama. And also, if you're in Texas, a Texas Art Supply, they have, or I have seen them there. And I really like these because they add a nice pop of color, and I think line width of these is closer to a 0.5 line width than a 0.38. So if you're looking for a fineliner that lasts a long time and is quite colorful, I definitely do recommend these. And then, so for the only pencil that I use, I grew up really loving mechanical pencils and stationery, but somehow I landed on this Pentel E-Sharp pencil in the 0.5. This for me is the most random pencil ever because I actually did not buy this. I got it at my office at work, and I feel like the thickness of the barrel and the type of grip it is, and just something about the pencil, it's very, very lightweight. I just really like it. I don't really know where you can buy these. I feel like they can probably just at an office supply store. They're I think pretty inexpensive, but this is just a random pencil that I found, and so I guess it kind of goes to show that, you know, not every piece of equipment that you like is going to have to cost a lot. Yeah, I've been using this for over 2 years now as my most consistently used pencil. Before I changed jobs, actually, I took, I think, 2 more just so I could have them. But yeah, this is a great pencil for me. I think once again, it goes back to being able to not dig into my middle finger when I write. But yeah, that's all of my favorite writing utensils for journaling and writing in general. Alright, so for the next part of this video, I wanted to go through my reading list for 2026 because in 2025, I decided to get myself back into reading because ever since I had finished high school and went through college, I didn't read pretty much any books within that time, maybe a few self-help books here and there, but I don't think I read maybe more than 10 books between, I think, like 2018 up until 2025. So I wanted to bring myself back into reading because I had once been a very avid reader. And so I gave myself the task of reading 12 books in 2025, and I was very happy to have completed that, and it just reawakened my love for reading. And so going into 2026, I then increased my goal from 12 books to 24. And I just wanted to go through all of the books that I do intend to read, and I think the order will definitely change depending on how I'm feeling month to month. But I'll go ahead and start off with the books that I've already completed so far this year. And so my first read of 2026 was Nobody's Girl by Virginia Giuffre, and I did end up rating it 5 stars. This book was very gut-wrenching to read, but still very relevant to what's happening in the United States today. And I do recommend this book, but just know that it is a very, tough read because of the subject matter, but it's a great read and very informative nonetheless. So my second read of this year is actually something that I've never really read before in my life. Obviously, magazines have always existed, but I was on a hunt for some books at a half-price bookstore, and I actually came across a whole set. There was a lot more that I did not pick up. But I came across this collection of old National Geographic magazines, and some of the cover stories on these older editions really caught my eye. And so the order that I'm reading them is from the oldest to the newest, the oldest being this first one, which is from July 1976. And I think what drew me to picking these up was that, they were very affordable. I think they were maybe $2 each or maybe less. But what really drew me to them is just having physical media of just current events. For example, something, I don't think I can show what's inside, but you just have to take my word for it. I read that an old Honda Civic used to cost $2,979, and the mileage was 42 miles per hour, 42 miles on the highway and 32 on the city. So I don't know, maybe I'm just out of date with Honda Civic mileages, but I feel like that's not too far off from now. But if you ever see these National Geographics, especially the old ones, I definitely recommend giving them a look or even a read and pick a couple up. I don't know, maybe I'm just imagining things, but I feel like the way that these news articles and just articles in general were written were very compelling compared to some of the things that I read on, I guess, modern websites today. But nonetheless, these were really cool to find, and I don't know if I'll keep them forever. Maybe I will give them away or redonate them in the future, but definitely give them a try if you find them. All right, and so for the next book that I finished this year, it was The Prisoner of Heaven by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, but I can't stop recommending this series. It's the Shadow of the Wind series, and I was very lucky on this day to pick up pretty much every book that is a part of this series. I went across the whole city to pick them all up because I don't know if maybe these versions of the book were just overstock or something, but I saw so many of these on sale in half-price books. And then I also have the, I think, epilogue of the series, The City of Mist. And then I'm currently reading a different version, but we'll get to that. I really enjoy the whole Shadow of the Wind series, and particularly The Prisoner of Heaven was another great installment in the series for me. I really like how all the books, all the lore and every detail and every character somehow seems to matter and be so important. And in this one, they gave one of the beloved characters, at least, or most interesting characters I find, his backstory and how he ended up in the situation he's in this world. So another great installment in this series. And in a sense, this series feels like the plot does nothing but thicken, because the book that I'm currently reading right now is The Labyrinth of the Spirits, and this is the 4th book, and actually the final book in the series, excluding the epilogue book. But I'm 62% done with this one, and I'm kind of sad that it's coming to an end because it's been a really long time since I've been so captivated by I think quartet series of books, or just any series of books. Normally the ones that I've been reading are pretty standalone. So I will be sad to be saying goodbye to this world very soon, but this one is even somehow I find to be even more interesting because you know that the series is coming to an end and a lot of loose ends are still floating around, especially only a little bit over halfway. So if you have a love for mystery books, and this is actually a Spanish translation, or a Spanish book translated to English. If you're into mystery books and a little bit of romance, The Shadow of the Wind is once again a really good series that I cannot recommend more or enough. And so the next book on my reading list is the epilogue, The City of the Mist. I have no idea what this book is going to be about. It's really short compared to pretty much all the other ones. So I believe it's probably just some sort of continuation of the story, but maybe less closely so. So I look forward to reading this really soon. I actually don't have physicals for pretty much all of these books. I only try to have physicals for books that I know I really like, and I try to buy them mostly secondhand at a half-price book. So if it's not there, I kind of just opt to reading it on an e-reader instead. And I think e-reading is a lot easier for me sometimes because I feel bad accidentally ruining a book. The next book on my list is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. And I think for most of the fiction books that are on my list, I got the recommendation either through a friend or maybe, I guess, the book YouTubers that I like to follow. They have recommended it in the past. So I don't know the exact reason why I have it on my TBR, but they're all pretty well rated and well liked. So I want to give them a try. So Red Rising by Pierce Brown, then it would be Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang. This next one is definitely a recommendation by a friend. It's Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. This is, I believe, a book relating to the medical field, and there was another book similar to this, I believe, called When Breath Becomes Air, which is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. So I look forward to this because the friend who recommended this rated it really well. This next book is 1984 by George Orwell. I've actually never read this book, even though it's so popular and a very common high school literature book. Somehow we skipped over it. I think for me and my curriculum, instead of reading 1984, we read A Brave New World instead. So I'm excited to give this a read. The next on my list is The Diary of Anne Frank. I just felt like this book was something that I wanted to give a read, as I find that its subject matter is very relevant to today. So I definitely wanted to give that one a read this year. The next one is The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. And then another high school literature reading list book is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This was recommended to me by my friend, and she is currently reading it, I believe, or maybe she had just finished it, but she recommended that I read it soon because she wants to talk about it. So normally that's kind of what happens for me, is that if someone is close to me and they're recommending me a book and they say it's really, really good, I normally push it up really high into my TBR and read it. That's basically what happened for me with The Shadow of the Wind. One of my friends was reading it and he said it was really, really good. And he himself was also getting back into reading. So I was like, okay, if you think it's super good, sure, I'll give it a try. And I do not regret that at all. The next one is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and let me find the author. This one is by Douglas Adams. I believe this was actually a recommendation I saw on BTS's RM's reading list or something, and it's been on my TBR for so many years now. And so I think I just kind of pushed it up there to kind of get it out of the way and see what the hype was all about. The next one is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And then I have two books by Brandon Sanderson. I have heard that he is a really good fantasy author, and the two books that I will be reading is first Mistborn and then The Emperor's Soul. I believe Mistborn is a series, so a lot of these books are, I think, parts of series, so I can see that maybe this list probably won't get completed as is right now, but this is my very optimistic list of books. And then after that, I have East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I feel like I've seen this book pop up quite often nowadays when it comes to people talking about getting into the classics and reading those kinds of books. So I've seen East of Eden being a popular choice, as well as the Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And then my next book is The Raven Scholar by Antonio Hodgson. And then lastly, to end things off for, I could say, memoirs and fiction, is the Ember and the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir. And then for nonfiction, I have 4 books. So the first one is Manufacturing Consent by Edward S. Sherman and Noam Chomsky. And then I also have this book that I saw at the bookstore as well. This is kind of a textbook. It's called An Introduction to Fiction, and I decided to pick this one up because I don't know, something about it felt kind of nostalgic for me. I've never seen this book before, but it just reminded me a little bit of my AP literature classes. And I just felt like this would be really interesting. I believe it has a bunch of excerpts and then just exercises for analyzing writing, which is something that I just kind of wanted to do. I don't know if I'll actually finish this or how far I'll get, but I thought it would be interesting to actually have a textbook and some just guidance when it comes to understanding and explaining my thoughts with literature, because I do find that at times it is hard for me to put into words either certain literary devices or why I believe a book is good. So if I can improve upon that this year, that would be really awesome. The next book on my list is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and it's a forgotten history of how our government segregated America. My last one is actually not nonfiction, but I called it a free space on my list for any series continuations. So it's for if I like any book or book series, that this space will probably just get taken up by something that I'm going to be reading in the future. So that's all of my books for my 2026 reading list. If you have any recommendations or any of the books on my list that you think I should prioritize, please let me know. I'm always in the market for some book recommendations, as well as ways I can more easily source secondhand books. I also do go to the library as well, but for certain series that I really enjoy, I do like to own my own physical copy for my own personal library. And so for the last part of this video, I just wanted to quickly go over some of my New Year's goals that I wanted to share. So to start off, I want to do more urban sketching and spend time outside in nature or at a coffee shop, or spending time with maybe my dog outside so he can get some good socialization, and just spend time painting and drawing and absorbing my surroundings. There is a YouTuber that I recently discovered. I think his name is Sketching Scotty or Sketching with Scotty, and he has some really great tutorials for learning how to do urban sketching. And so for me, I do want to try and follow those and to get more confident and just faster at painting and drawing whatever I see in front of me. So that's a huge skill that I'm looking forward to improving. Also related to art is that I want to fuse more of my love for illustration into ceramics, so you can expect to see more of my pieces to have more of an illustrative touch. So for example, I would love to make a small series of objects that are based off of the game Stardew Valley. I've been super obsessed with playing that game as of late. Unfortunately though, in this new year I haven't been playing that much, but most of last year, I was very stuck playing Stardew Valley. Moving on to a different category is language learning. So for myself this year, I decided to get very serious with this goal because it's something that I've been wanting to do essentially my whole young adult life and even life in general. But as a baby, I grew up speaking Chinese and Vietnamese, but unfortunately as I went into school, my parents did pause teaching me and my siblings because they feared that maybe we wouldn't do as well in school or even get bullied for not knowing English. So unfortunately, I definitely lost pretty much all my Chinese and Vietnamese. So I decided to take up actually learning Mandarin this year. And the reason I chose Mandarin between the two is that for me, it would probably be the most realistic because I had already taken Chinese classes in high school and college, even though both of them kind of were at the same level, which is like very, very basic Chinese. So understanding some of the fundamentals, I was already there for that, and I already kind of understand bits and pieces of Chinese compared to Vietnamese, where I feel like ever since I left home and moved away for college, I basically don't hear Vietnamese at all on a daily basis as I used to. So I find that in a situation where I'm listening to someone speak Vietnamese or Chinese, I normally understand way more Chinese than Vietnamese. So Vietnamese is for next year for sure, but this year my biggest thing is not necessarily becoming very fluent, but it's becoming confident in practicing on a day-to-day basis. So thankfully for me, my boyfriend and his family all speak Chinese at home. And so with my boyfriend, I just talk to him and try to swap out sentences to just improve my confidence for day-to-day things, because I don't expect myself to ever be super extremely fluent to like maybe the business level, but being able to be confident in a day-to-day conversation is absolutely something I would love for myself. So that's my biggest goal for this year. I've already completed, I believe, 4 lessons with my online tutor, and she's awesome. If you're somebody who's maybe looking to learn a new language, I definitely suggest prioritizing finding a teacher who doesn't make you feel bad for messing up or not having a perfect accent, or that you're just like struggling. I think I only tried one teacher, but you know, do as I say, not as I do. But she makes me feel very comfortable to ask questions and not feel ashamed of my accent. And so that just makes it so I am then empowered to practice more and more, and I just naturally go confidence and more curious, and that curiosity is what's going to, I believe, make me a much more fluent speaker in the future. So if you're looking to learn a new language, just start. I kind of feel like I just start, not just in the spirit of the new year, but this was because I got my year-end bonus. So I was like, oh, instead of spending it on something else, I treated it as like my language learning scholarship for myself. And then my last big goal for 2026 is actually to volunteer more in my city, and my current goal is to volunteer maybe on the weekend, at least every other month. And so some of the efforts that I want to volunteer at include a nearby shelter, my animal shelter, my local food bank, a women's shelter, educating children, donating to school supply drives, and then doing local park cleanups. I think it'll be really important for me to engage locally with my community, especially since I've moved to a new city. I've already felt like I've been integrating a little more into my local community just by doing ceramics and meeting the local people that come by, and also the business owner. So if you have any other efforts that you like to volunteer at, I'd love to hear that too, because I'm always kind of looking for new things to try and ways to help my local community. Alright, so that's the end of this video. I hope you found that informative and that you have been having a good start to your new year. And that's all for now, so thank you for watching.